Hi, everyone, and welcome to another version of Invitation to a Conversation. Today, I'm glad to have invited someone who is up and coming in the political ranks. When I see her, all I can say is Julie, 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 because she is everywhere. She's on every social media, and whatever comes out during the week or during the day daily, she has a video and she has something to say about it. So right now, let me tell you a little bit about our candidate for House District 179, Julie Jordan. Adopted when she was 2 weeks old, Julie was raised in Lancaster, California, which is in the Mojave Desert. Her mom, Janet, was a cosmetologist and a small business owner. And her dad, Bob, was a union worker for Safeway, a grocery store chain for 35 years. Julie graduated from Antelope Valley High School in 1983. She attended Cal Poly San Luis Obispo on a basketball scholarship and was the first member of her family to graduate from college. Congratulations. Julie graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Journalism, Public Relations in 1988, joining the staff of the Georgia Southern women's basketball team in 1988. Julie was a graduate assistant for 2 years while completing her Master of Science in Sports Management. She became an assistant coach in 1990, and Julie taught physical education and coached basketball and soccer, served as athletic director, and became a professional school counselor during her 8-year tenure at Hinesville Middle School. She earned her Master's of Education and Education Specialist in Counselor Education from Georgia Southern University in 1995 and in 1997. And now we welcome you to Brunswick, Georgia. How you doing today?
Doing great, Pamela. Wow. It's my birthday's tomorrow, and I'll be 55. So when I think about being in college and being in California and then coming to Georgia, I've actually been in Georgia for over 32 years.
Well, thank you, and pre-early birthday, happy 55. I wish I can remember 55.
Well, you look like you're 30, Pamela.
Thank you, thank you. Well, we're all on time, so I have a lot of questions to ask you, and so we're going to get going on this conversation. But thank you once again for accepting my invitation.
Thanks for having me.
When did you get interested in politics? How old were you, and how did you get interested in it?
Well, I certainly never thought I'd be a candidate. When I was younger, I always, even in elementary school, we'd go to the city council meetings and come up with ideas to have, like, I remember we were pitching an idea to have a big street festival in Lancaster one year, and I remember going and speaking. I always enjoyed advocating to do events or make things better. And when I came to Georgia, when I was in college and graduate school, I became an advocate for different things. I was a president of the Georgia School Counselors Association, so an advocate for students and for school counselors across the state of Georgia. But I never thought I'd be, a political candidate. But I always liked making our community better. So when when I ran in 2018, I was one of the first Democratic candidates to run in this area in over 8 years. So there was no really Democrats running except Commissioner Booker and Linda Bobbitt for the school board and Commissioner Booker for the Glenn County Commission. There was no other Democrats and really no women running.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I'm like, I got tired of voting for people that didn't have any opposition. I felt like, everybody needs to have a voice and voters need to have a choice in these elections. So I really thought it was important to step up and give people a voice so that they can be represented.
Good. Okay. And speaking of women running and in politics, isn't this the era of women in politics? Oh, there are so much of a diverse of women running against men in the world of politics. It's exciting. I love it. Um, Explain to us about House District 179. I understand that that's a legislation branch. So explain to the people, because many can't people run, but we really don't know the backside of how that particular seat works. So
Right.
could you explain to us House District 179?
Yeah, sure. So it's a state house district. So when I win in November, I will go to the state capitol for session, and that usually lasts 40 days. Starts anywhere from the beginning of January, and it can run through April. But this year, with the pandemic, they had to take a break and then come back in June. So we go and represent basically this District 179, which is Brunswick. It is St. Simons, Sea Island, and Jekyll Island, and then part of the unincorporated area of Glenn County. So really most of Glenn County. And a lot of people don't know what the what the Georgia House does. We are actually in charge of passing the budget. So we can bring the issues from here in Glenn County, like education. You know, this year, the state legislature led by Republicans basically cut $1 billion from education budget during the pandemic.
Mm.
So we help make what the priorities are in the budget, and we get it passed. We can also introduce legislation to like bring more jobs to this area, to improve our transportation, pre-K, you know, universal pre-K. We can bring all of the budget priorities and help the community out that way.
Okay, thank you. A lot of people, some people say sometimes when people become new in an organization or on a committee, they like to say they would like to see fresh new ideas. What is the one law that you would like to see being legislated through your district?
Well, as you know, Pamela, Republicans have been in charge of the governor, the state Senate, and the state House for a long time. So there's lots of work that has to be done to put people first. With one of the main things is, you know, voter rights, because if we can't guarantee that everybody's vote counts, anything else we try to do doesn't matter because the people won't be represented. So voting rights is so important. But also Medicaid expansion. We have 500,000 people across the state of Georgia that don't have health care. And right now, Medicaid expansion is one thing that could bring over 50,000 jobs into Georgia. It could bring up to $3 billion a year in revenue, which would bump up our economy and our healthcare system. And it would also help everybody, you know, that doesn't have insurance right now. So those are two big things, but I could list you a list.
Sure. If you could remove, if you could remove one law off of the books, what would that law be?
Well, I think obviously with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery this year, we've seen that criminal justice reform is needed. So the one thing right now that I'd like to see happen is go ahead and repeal the citizen's arrest law. Also stand your ground, but there's so many other criminal justice reforms that need to happen. But at least those would be, you know, right there at the start.
Right. Early voting. What is the importance of early voting? How important is that? I know it's important. You know it's important. But there's a lot of people out here that don't see the importance of it. How important is it to vote early?
Well, obviously in the pandemic, the best way right now would be to vote by mail, absentee ballot. And a lot of people, you hear, oh, I don't know, I don't trust it, but that's really a myth. Absentee ballots or voting by mail is very safe. If you don't feel like you want to mail it, you can actually go drop it in the drop box on Gloucester Street. They have a big secure drop box. So the earlier you can vote, the better, so that the people that maybe that may be vulnerable, that may be ill or elderly, if we can vote by mail, and if they have to vote in person, there's not such big crowds. So they will be safer. But voting early, if you can't vote by mail, then vote early. We have almost, as you know, Pamela, we have almost 3 weeks of early voting here in Glenn County.
Yes.
And, you don't have to have a reason to vote early. So we have 3 different sites. We have Ballard Park. We have the fire station on St. Simon's, and then we have the Board of Education on Gloucester. You want to vote early, so if there's any problems, it can be fixed. Sometimes people show up and they might have not changed their address or done something. So this will allow them to get everything fixed, that if there is a problem, it can be remedied so their vote will count.
Right. And that was my next question. You already answered it. The 3 places with early voting. And I tell you, as you know, for the last year or so, I've been working early voting. And it's from Monday 7 to 7. And Tuesday to Fridays from 8 to 5. And we have one day on Saturdays, the second Saturday of that week from 9 to 4. And that is plenty of time for anybody to get out and vote, opposed to just waiting until election day on August the 11th. Mm-hmm. For those who don't vote or those who stop voting, what would you like to say to them?
Well, before I ran for office, I didn't realize how many of our everyday things are affected by local elections and state legislature. A lot of people like to vote just for president or governor, but really the most important votes are for your local and state legislators, because it affects everything we do. From minimum wage. People don't realize that the state legislature can actually increase the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. Mm. So yeah, there's a lot of people here in Glenn County that make minimum wage or just a little bit above, and that's not a living wage. Well, that's me, and that's definitely one of my priorities, is to get the minimum wage raised. But people don't know that. Well, just like with city commission, they decide, zoning issues. They decide, just like the police department, they're over the police department, how much money is spent on infrastructure. So all of these issues affect everybody. So sometimes people say, I'm not really political. Really, everybody is political, because they are affected by all of the decisions that elected officials make. And if we don't vote, then we're saying that what is happening right now is okay. And you have to make your voice heard.
And I learned and I am guilty of only voting presidential until I became part of your Democratic Party a couple of years ago. And I learned that it's even more important to vote local, because that way, if that person decides to climb the chain of command, they go from local government, they can go to state government, and then they can go into federal government and go throughout Congress or the Senate and represent their state. And so, if, like the old saying goes, you have to follow the money, you have to also follow the candidate. You understand what I'm saying? So if they're basically not doing the right thing on a local level, then how much can you trust them to climb that ladder the higher they get in office to do the right thing for the people? That's very good. That's good. I understand that now. What is the youngest age a person can vote?
So 18.
Okay.
You can register to vote at 17 and a half, but you have to be 18 on election day.
Okay. All right.
But poll workers, I believe, only have to be 16.
Yes. Yes.
So you can become involved. And I actually have some high school students that are involved on my campaign. So just because you're younger doesn't mean that you cannot advocate for the things you want to see So, and that youth, have you heard about that Youth Speak Up? That's a new organization.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
put together by a lot of students, Tay Woods and some of her friends and leaders, youth leaders throughout the community. They've organized this, and they're trying to get involved and get people to vote. And I hope that they will have a debate between me and my opponents so they can make a good decision on who to vote for.
Maybe we can have them on invitation to a conversation and see how that goes. And I think it's important, just as we educate our children on everything else in life as they become young adults, the importance of voting. You know what I'm saying? Take them to the polls, let them see the process of voting and things like that. And it would be real interesting to hear their ideas of what changes or what things that they might see want to happen in their community or what they look forward to and change. Okay, what are some of the things happening right now in the local Democratic Party in Brunswick, Georgia?
Well, we are just about ready to have our drive-through dinner for democracy. We usually have our annual dinner once a year to raise money so that we can get Democrats elected up and down the ballot. And we usually have it at Selden Park, and 300 people there, and it's really celebratory atmosphere. We meet the candidates. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we have to do something a little different. So we are going to have in our offices in the Winn-Dixie Shopping Center, we're going to have a drive-through. So you can buy tickets, on glendems.org site or on our Facebook page. And Lady K's is going to cater it for us. So you're going to be able to drive through and get a wonderful, delicious dinner from Lady K's. We're going to have candidates lined up, masked up, so you can come by and wave at the candidates and get their signs or their swag. We're going to have a DJ playing. We're going to have Biden buttons and bumper stickers for everybody who buys it. We're going to have some Biden swag there, Pamela.
Right.
And we're going to raise some money for billboards and slate cards and to get these candidates elected, because we have 5 local candidates that are running. So we're going to get pumped up. So that's one thing. And then in less than 10 days, the Democratic National Convention is going to be aired on television, and it's virtual this year. So everybody gets to participate. So look for that, sign up to watch. I was blessed to be elected a delegate this year, so I've already cast my vote to nominate Joe Biden for president, and I got to vote on the platform. So I know everybody is ready to get Biden elected, so this is really an exciting time. So we've got phone banks going on, we've got texting banks. However you want to get involved, glendems.org or Julie Jordan at glendems.org, let us know. Like our Facebook page, our Instagram, and get involved.
Okay. Can you tell how many different elections are there? I know there were several different elections going on this year. Tell the people how many different elections there can be in one calendar year.
Okay, so this year was a little bit unique due to the pandemic.
Yes.
So this year we would have had the presidential primary, which started, but then it got moved. So we would have had the presidential primary, then we would have had the primary for the Democratic primary and the Republican primary in June. And those all got kind of pushed together. And when you have the Democrat, and then now we have a runoff. So we have a Democratic runoff between Lisa Ring and Joyce Griggs, which is actually early voting is over. And now election day is August 11th. So this Tuesday, if you haven't voted yet. Between Joyce Griggs and Lisa Ring, the Republicans are having a runoff on the same day for Senate 3 and also for the county commission at large. And we then move to the November general election, which will be the presidential, and it'll be the Senate, U.S. Senate, 1st Congressional District, everybody that's up for election will be on November 11th. I mean, sorry, November 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, November 3rd. And then because we have a special election to fill, to go against Loeffler to fill Isaac's seat, we have about 13 candidates. And they are going to be up for election on November 3rd for the US Senate seat special election. So different about it is that all the Democrats and Republicans are all in one election. So you have to get over 50% to win. That's probably not going to happen. So we're going to have probably a runoff of the top two candidates in January. So
and that's my follow-up question to you. Explain to people what a runoff is.
Right. So if there is more than one candidate, if there's a Democrat and a Republican running, you know, whoever wins, wins. But if there's a Republican and a Democrat and let's say an independent candidate during that general election, one of them have to receive over 50% of the vote. And if there's not, then the top two candidates go to a runoff.
Okay. Have you thought about who would you like to see as Biden's vice president?
Well, yeah, I think it's got to be a Black woman. You know, I'm so thrilled that it's going to be a woman.
Right.
But, I think it's got to be a Black woman. And, you know, as the Democratic Party chair, I can't, you know, decide.
Right.
But there's a lot of incredible women that are on that VP list.
Yeah, it sure is.
I think that any of them, but I'd really like to see a Black woman.
Okay, let me ask you this question. What do you think about the president trying to move the November election and and trying to cut the time on the post office so the mail-in ballots won't get in? I mean, I just want your opinion on it. That's all.
Well, I think Trump will do anything to stay in office, and you know, it's the election cannot be moved. If it doesn't take place, it will roll over. So he cannot move the election. I think that's just one of his ways of keeping people distracted and not paying attention to what a poor job he is doing as, you know, being elected and dealing with this pandemic. Right. So I think that's just a big distraction and it can't happen. And what was the second question? It was about,
oh, what do you think about him trying to cut the time, making the post office look bad because of the mail-in ballots? Because he is truly against and adamant about those mail-in ballots.
Right. And what's so funny is he thinks that absentee voting and mail-in ballots are something separate, which they're really the same thing. So I think that right now we have to support the post office. Mm-hmm. Be a political, you know, institution. It's I know Trump put one of his buddies in there to run it, and he's doing whatever he can to run it into the ground. But I have faith in our postal workers, and believe me, I'm sending enough mail to keep it going.
Right. And doing this, isn't this an election year? And I think that by the unfortunate death of John Lewis, somebody who has protested, that I have read about, have seen, and marched along for voting rights, I think that it will be significant. And I think that that would be the headlines to get people out to vote and to understand how important voting is. Some people think that voting is just something that you have to do, but it's past being a privilege. It's a duty. People used to say it's a privilege to vote. Okay, it's not. I see it as a duty, because there was a time where African Americans couldn't vote. but then the males could vote and then women couldn't vote. And so just to, but I think what people have to do is to better understand politics and understand the history and understand that each individual person, we're in this together, and that they have to vote. Because I have met many people over the years, including myself, some years ago, had thought that our vote didn't count. But I've learned to say that even in this past presidential race, if he would have gotten 79 and Hillary would have gotten 80, that one vote made a difference. It's like a win or lose game. Sometimes it's not how many points you won by. It's just the fact that you won. You know what I'm saying? And so by working early voting, I see a lot of enthusiasm people that will say, well, I had a doctor's appointment, but I'm going to come cast my vote, or I had this to do. And I would like to see that among a lot of young generation, a lot of our age people and older people, just to go out there and vote and make it their duty, no matter what the weather is. Because whoever we put in that seat, whether senator, congressman, or the president, we have them for a certain amount of years to do their job, and the presidency is the longest. But we cannot dismiss the fact of census now that we are in an election year. Once again, they have extended the time for the final day of filling out census. And now it's September the 30th. So can you put your spill on it and tell people why it's so important to fill out that form? Because there's many various ways that they can fill it out, through their computer, call them up. So tell us why it's so important to fill out that census.
Well, Pam, a lot of things are all about money, and it's basically the number of people that we have that fill out the census. That's how much money we get. So if only half of our citizens, if only half of the people of Glenn County fill out their census, then we're not going to get the money we need to provide an education or to provide services that people who need it. Another big thing is, did you know that redistricting lines are determined by the census?
Oh,
So if we don't have a lot of people fill out the census, we might not have as much representation at the federal government or at the state government. Another big thing, and this is why the state house for which I'm running is such a big deal. After the census, whoever's in charge, whichever party is in charge of the House, the Georgia House, they help to draw the redistricting lines. And we all know about gerrymandering. We have where right now on St. Simon's, there's a little rectangle on the left side of St. Simon's on the west side that's not part of District 179. It's part of the District 167, which is part of Long County and McIntosh County. So we want, when we get elected and we flip the House this year, we don't want to be like the Republicans and gerrymander things. We want to have bipartisan committee that makes fair redistricting lines. So when people vote, it's not already determined. So,
right.
The census is so important. And I know you can, do it online. You can call the census number and ask for help. You can do it by mail, but whatever you do, we've got to do it. I believe we've only done 58% here in Glenn County. So please fill out your census form.
Okay. Before I get to the last question of this conversation, is there anything that that I might have not asked you or mentioned that you want to tell us about choosing your political party or being a member of a party, or anything that you think that people should know?
Yeah, I think that you need to really educate yourself on, the different parties and where you fit. I know the Democratic Party is a big tent party. We've got a lot of different views, and we believe that everybody can play a part and be represented. So that is definitely one of the reasons that I'm a Democrat. I also like, we're the party of the working people. We're not a lot of rich people out there. We value working families. We value the importance of education and of healthcare and all of those things that make this economy, run, and what makes this country great. One thing that I don't want people to vote when you're not educated about the candidates.
Mm-hmm.
There, like you said, I'm out there at everything I can be virtually. I do virtual town halls. A lot of our elected officials, my opponent doesn't do any town halls, doesn't do any social media, only shows up for Republican fundraisers. Doesn't really, has a website, but it's not very good. Social media, doesn't post, doesn't usually have debates. So there's a lot of elected officials here that are Republicans that will not be accessible to the people. I give out my home phone number. I give out anything. If you call me, I will. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to find it out. It's time, as we have seen, in this county, it's time to hold elected officials accountable. Not just vote exactly, hey, this person's this. But if they're not a good candidate, don't vote for them. You need to hold them accountable. You need to say, hey, what do you feel about this issue? How are you going to deal with this? And let and Pam, just like you always give me your opinion, how you believe. I want to know how you guys feel. I want to know how the community feels on an issue. Because I'm not there to represent just my own views. I'm there to represent the people. I'm there to serve for the people. I think a lot of people have forgotten that government is about serving the people and not serving yourself. So I think that's, be educated and hold people accountable.
And you bring me to ask you this question, because talking to a lot of people, they would say like they never heard of that candidate until it's time to run, and then they don't never see that candidate until the campaign is going on. Because there's, like you said, there are a lot of people that campaign and just come into your district just to get your vote. And when that election is over, then you don't see them in your neighborhood anymore. You don't see them in your church anymore. They come to their church to campaign and get your votes and tell you a little bio about themselves or whatever. And I think that's one of the things that we really have to do better in the future, is to be a face out there like you're doing all the time, and be open to the public, to the people, and let them know where you stand, and speak on different things that's going on while the campaign is going on. Because if you just wait until a debate, if you're doing it along the way, that's giving them an open view of how you feel about different things that's going on in the country, like Ahmad, Aubrey, like the DA, or like the things that are going on, policing and stuff like that. And I think that's real important. Okay, so yeah, so I think that's important, that to go out there and campaign early and be a face out there and let the people know that you're concerned, not about one specific thing, but all things that's going on. Oh, and this is the other thing, but we have to also try to let people say, because a lot of people think that based on who's running in the election, that that person is already going to win. So no matter what they do, they think that the people already know who they want in the House to be representative of the people. And so that's some of the reason why a lot of people don't vote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you know what's so important to know, a lot, usually on the islands, on St. Simon's and Jekyll Island, usually there's 78% of registered voters turn out. 78%. And that is about probably 30% Democrats, the rest Republicans. And so that's why, because there's always turnout on the islands, that's why a lot of times Democrats lose. But in Brunswick, there is 16,000 registered voters. if Brunswick and a lot of that's our Democratic area. If Brunswick would show out, if the people would realize the power they have by voting, if they will show up to vote, we will win. They will have a voice. Instead of just having one school board from District 5 and one county commissioner from District 5, they will have the opportunity to win at-large seats and other seats that really matter. And then this community will have a voice. We will have a voice, and it won't always be, the same old white male
Right.
that don't represent the diversity of our community. So
Right.
I want to encourage voters, understand, Brunswick, you have the power to change the face of government in Georgia and in Glenn County.
Yeah.
And they've got to use it because their voice is important and it needs to be heard.
And that is why I am so proud of the protesters that were out there protesting. If they would take that same energy, it's sad for what they were protesting about, but it spilled over into other social and economic things that need to be said and need to be heard and need to be listened to. But if they take that same energy and take it to the polls, because that's the only way, like you said, that change can be starting to be made by their votes. Yeah, and it's real important. Yes, I like that. Isn't it Illinois or a state that just overturned where felons can vote now? That was a bigger thing about people who had a record, whether they were felonies or not, that they could vote now. How many states are now still doing that, and how many states do you know of that has to change into that now?
Well, I know that Florida had passed that, I think last year. But in Georgia, that if you have served your time, if you have done your probation and paid your fees, you're eligible to register to vote again.
That's
so
awesome.
People are not aware of that. So we do have a system here in Georgia that you have to pay your fees, you have to have done your time, paid your fees, and done your probation, but then you can re-register to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. So a lot of people don't realize that. I'll go around knocking doors before the pandemic, or I'll talk to voters and they'll say like, well, I was arrested, and I'll be like, well, did you serve your time? But the three issues,
Right.
and I said, well, then you can vote.
Right. And like you said, people have to educate and read and learn that a lot of things that they think is not going on or not happening, it is happening, and they can do those things. And that's one of those, things that they can do.
Yeah. And if they have questions, they can definitely call our Board of Elections here. We have a great Board of Elections. The people that work there really want every vote to count. So if you have a question about that, you can certainly call and ask them.
Okay. Well, Julie, time is winding down, and I thank you for this conversation. But I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite slogan or a favorite scripture, and how has that slogan or scripture changed your life and changed your journey in life?
I think one is definitely, I can do all three things through Christ. You know what I mean? When things get down and I feel like I can't go on, that is definitely one that speaks to me. I think a slogan is just do it, and just no matter what's in front of you, no matter what your obstacles are, keep pushing through it and do what's right. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't achieve your dreams.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Julie, people, you have heard her voice, you have seen her. So go out there and vote. This is your new candidate for House District 179. And thank you again for my invitation to a conversation. And you continue to have a blessed weekend. Let me stop again.